Good morning, everyone! On this blessed day, I'm making a serving tray. A simple task, except for size, which made it slightly more challenging. The wood was split in half lengthwise, creating a piece I wanted and a part I needed to remove that I could use for scraps. When the Mitre Saw didn't work, I hoped the planer would split the inner and outer pieces. But even the planer failed to do so. If it did succeed, I would have witnessed a projectile piece of wood flying out. Thankfully I didn't, but it did a great job of smoothly planing the top and bottom. The wood was quite warped, but I managed to smooth it out perfectly. Since the saw and planer failed to remove the scrap wood, I decided to try it by hand. And I have been unable to do that too. Thus, I shoved a piece of scrap wood and applied enough leverage with a lot of forceful persistence to cause the wood pieces to separate from each other. Once split, I quickly sanded the wood to remove any caked on dust or scratched up wood. Doing so also allowed me to inspect the wood and see if there were any imperfections on the wood that I could seal up. And there were! I used the scrap piece of wood as leverage instead of chisel to minimize damage to the tray I was making. But even with that, I ended up with some holes that I had to seal. And by this point, I have more than enough scrap olive wood to do so. So I made paste by mixing fine sawdust with glue and patched the surface to look smooth. After letting the paste dry for 2 days, I started sanding. First, I used 80 to 120 grit to remove imperfections from the paste and smooth the corners. Then, at 150 to 320 grit, I continued defining the shape where I needed to. From there, it was smooth sailing to 800 grit until the whole thing shone in a light and slipped out of my hands. And now comes my favorite part when working with olive wood. Oiling. Look at that color pop. It goes from plain whitish orange into this dark rich brown and orange. With each oiling it gets darker and darker. I do a total of 3 layers of oil per side. As the last step, all left to do is polish some beeswax so that the whole thing would look shiny, last a lot longer and look proper and finished. I moved the buffing pad as slowly as possible to melt that wax and have it bond with the surface. And thus I was done. Sadly, I'm all out of olive wood and anything to make a serving tray out of. Of course, I have some wood drying that I can turn into a table or a tray, but for now, that is it. Expect something cool next week. If you enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed making this, consider leaving a like and subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, those are very welcome too. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you next week for something super exciting. Bye bye!